Mike, I'm here in the corner again. So this is the latest. It's version 24. It's still a pre-alpha version. I use version numbers, not like video games where it's like 1.756. I just do one and up, and they end up getting pretty high. But anyway, the point is that this is the game here. It's just a pages document right now. It's currently a couple hundred pages, but the bulk of it is that's done is only to page 150. However, we're going to go and find some base building stuff. And so, as I mentioned in the last one, if you need to find something, you just search for it. And here we're going to, here's our base building chapter. And let's take a look. All right, so let's zoom in here a little bit more. All right, so base building, right? The types of bases you can build: rural bases, urban bases, traveling bases, faction bases, right? And so that gets us an idea of the types of things we'll be building. Basically, these are just like, they're just battle maps. And so what you could do is draw them in Photoshop, literally with your mouse if you have to, although I don't recommend it with your mouse. I would, if you've got a phone or Procreate, on an iPad or something, you could really easily just do it there. But the idea is just drawing something that is usable. You need a base, right? This is 3 different buildings. There you go. And here's a path that connects them. Right? I'll have some videos detailing like, and here's a tree, and here's a tree, and here's a tree. And if you add colors to this, guess what? It actually isn't going to look that bad. So anyway, so that's kind of the basics of it, is like you just make something really quick. That took, 15 seconds? So, and that's sort of the design for your base. Now you have to go and build it. Like, you didn't build it yet. So obviously, if you're going to have these buildings, the first thing to ask is, what is it going to be made of? How tall is it going to be? How many stories, right? And how many rooms will it take to finish that particular building, right? Because the base building mechanics are based on rooms, and those rooms are 20 by 20, roughly. And so it's how many 20 by 20 rooms does it take to finish that building? And that's the materials that you'll need to then go harvest or buy or whatever to build your base. Now, obviously, renting bases and buying bases is totally an option, but most people aren't going to have that kind of money to begin with, and there's not a lot of borrowing money in the game. There's not banks, and so you either have the money to buy it or barter or rent, or you don't. And so that's roughly how the game works. All right, so let's talk about more advanced ways. Once you get past the paper napkin one, right, I'll show you the details of the actual harvesting and crafting. But if you want to make your base a little bit nicer, then you would pull it into a tool like Dungeon Draft. You don't need to draw, right, to do this. You just, and it's like a $20 investment. But look at how beautiful their maps are, right? And these are things that you could just, it's like a hobby. If you're bored while everybody else is taking their turns in combat, you could be building the base and designing the base and making some new rooms for it, right? Like, why not? And it just is something that makes it personal to you. Your base can get damaged when you get attacked. Like, people will often damage your base depending on who it was that it was attacking, what their main purpose was, all that kind of stuff. So the idea is you have your base, and then you'll build the map out further, and you'll see the sort of the surrounding environments around your base as well. And every tree that's on that is a certain amount of lumber, right? And same thing with rocks and things like that. But if it's not directly on your map, then it's on the overland map, which we'll talk about later. But that's kind of the basics of it, is that if you want to do something affect the map on which your base is going to be built, you have to harvest or craft to make those things happen. If you ever played RimWorld, this is inspired largely by RimWorld or Minecraft or any other crafting game, right? But look how easy it is to make a building with this Dungeon Draft tool. Does it require you to learn a new tool? Yeah, but do it. It's fun. It's gonna improve It's just going to be fun. I just promise you it's going to be fun. All right. I haven't had a lot of time to build these maps, but I will in the future, and that's the basics of how the game works. Back to the actual base building mechanics of it. So as I mentioned, it's based on a per room basis, and while I don't have the numbers exactly figured out yet on, it looks like I may have deleted it, but the reality is that rural bases are the easiest to build. Urban bases are by far the most expensive, although you could like live in the undesirable neighborhoods, right, and get more stuff, or get a better deal, right? So on your rent, or maybe even be able to buy something, but then you're gonna have to deal with more crime, right? So the end game will simulate that crime. You'll have a higher crime ratio, so you'll get broken in more. And does the game have kind of an unrealistic amount of base raids? Well, it really depends on how often your game master doesn't show up, because your base raids typically happen when your game master doesn't show up. You don't have to do a raid, but that's what it's called when like robbers come in or somebody's going to come in and some sort of negative thing will happen to your base. You guys run like the players without the game master run sort of like it's like a defend your base kind of scenario, and they all kind of game master the characters that aren't theirs, and that can easily be recorded with modern technology if your game master needs it to. But the best way is just to trust that your players are gonna make a cool story, and whatever happens that night, they'll come back to the game master with news, surprises of what happened, right? Like, and maybe they burnt down half your base. Maybe a dragon came in and broke in through the roof, which happened in one of my campaigns with my older brother. Maybe, there's any number of things that could happen. Okay, traveling bases are like wagons, boats, flying ships, and stuff, and then a faction base is when your group of people is more than just like 10 or 20, right? Once you get into the 15 to 30 range, or 50 people at your base, that's when you actually have to have specific management tools, which aren't built yet. But the idea is you just have a spreadsheet, which you basically copy in your characters, characters into there. And one of the line items is like what their workability is and schedules and things like that. And that will basically give you a number, output a number as to like how productive is your faction at X, Y, or Z, right? And so, okay, so these three stats like workability, building ability, and this ability, those are all, you can produce so much over a week or a month in your base. If you've got 50 people and 20 of them are crafters, then that gives you all of the numbers to make this whole system work, right? So the basics is that as you grow bigger, it attracts more problems, right? So the bigger you are, the bigger your problems will be in general. And there's always a random chance of ridiculously big problems, a small one, where it's like somebody that is just massively larger than you is going to affect you somehow, and it's not a winnable scenario. You can always turn those off if you want, but that's the idea behind the game, and that's sort of the idea behind base building and how it works and how you go about upkeeping it. When time passes, basically we have this sorry, I know I'm kind of all over the place. Let's go to time passing chapter. Here we go. So the main thing is that there's a lot of time remapping. That is an animation term that I'm pulling into the tabletop realm, which is like if scenes don't fit perfectly together, you just force them to fit together, right? So if some of your crafters had 3 weeks of time and your other guys had 2 weeks and 2 days worth of time, who cares? It's time to move on. Smash it all together. We're moving on, right? Like you don't have time to do everything. It's still just a game, and so that's what time remapping is. But these upkeep duties is a new dawn rises, and so that's a day. A week goes by, and that's what you do during a week. And so you'd have basically little cheat cards where each player would be like, okay, my game master said that a week went by, and so I know that I do X, Y, and Z when a week goes by. And if seasons change, that means 3 months went by. And so if a year passes, right? Well, that's everything, that's how the game works. And so you update your base and your personal characters that you're stewarding with that information based on some spreadsheet tools which have yet to be built, but which we're in the process of building. And so that's the idea. All right. Talk to you later. Hopefully that sounds appealing to you. It doesn't sound too complex. The idea is it's going to be as simple as copying and pasting a couple line items into a new spreadsheet tool and then looking at how that affects the output of that spreadsheet tool, right? And so it's not as complex as you think that it is. And don't be afraid of it. All right, that's it. Talk later.